Hi everyone, my name is Lauren and welcome back to my channel. This is Light and Lavender, where we talk about all things books and my own writing journey, and today I'm going through a first quarter reading wrap up stats situation. So last year I kind of fell off the wrap up hype, I guess you could say, because I just was not reading enough books. I think at one point there was 1 month where I read like a book and I had to force myself to read it, so I just stopped the monthly wrap-ups. And this year it started the same. January I only read 2 books, spoiler alert, so I have decided to kind of like put them into quarterly wrap-ups, and as I decided to do that, the amount of books I read kind of exploded a little bit more than I was expecting. So this is going to be a bit of a long one, but I've also got some stats that I want to go through, so I'm really excited to like start doing this and just share a little bit more of the information that I'm reading. And I say transparent, but like just to give myself more of an understanding of what I'm reading, and also you can help you gauge sort of what I'm reading. So I've got a little Excel spreadsheet that I've put together. I half stole it from Kat over at Kat's Book Corner and pulled it from Google Sheets, put it into Excel, did some different things with it to make it how I wanted it to work, and put some graphs in. So I'm going to have some graphs popping up here with information that I've got, but yeah, without further ado, let's go. So in the first quarter I read 16 books in total. This consisted of 2 books in January, 6 books in February and 8 books in March. So January started slow, and then I read quite a lot of books. And the total number of pages for this, because yes, I've started to track my pages because I want to see kind of like how much I'm reading compared to just like the books themselves, because some of these books are tiny. But the total number of pages was 4,445, which I was impressed with. When I got that number I was like, what have I been reading? Then I remembered that one of them is like that behind me, and that is a chunky book. So in January I read 708 pages, in February I read 1,222 pages, and in March I read 2,515 pages. So the main reason I've read so many of these is because I read a lot of comic books and manga-esque style things in February and March. That's also why I was able to get through so many books in this quarter. I don't know if it's going to continue for the rest of the year or not, but I'm going to try and read as many actual physical books that I've got to push myself up there. So far in April I finished 1 book. We are on like the 15th, I think it is today. So we are a little bit behind where I would like to be, but I think that we've got this. I've still got a chance to pull it back, really. Overall this quarter I've had a nice split of genres that I've been reading. So the genres are as follows. I've read 4 contemporary books, I've read 1 classic, I've read 5 fantasy books, which is not really a surprise to anyone. I've read 2 non-fiction books, and I am surprised there. I thought I'd got through more, but clearly I have not read as much non-fiction as I thought I would be doing. I've read 2 retellings, 1 romance and also 1 thriller. So this is my nice little pie chart of the genres that I've read and the split down of that. I think it's quite interesting to see the different styles of things. Fantasy clearly is still like my biggest love. If I go through all my shelves, fantasy is probably the most prevalent genre that I've got on my shelves, both physical and digital. So I'm not surprised that I've read so many fantasy this quarter, to be honest. I'm just gonna look through some graphs now for you. So like, this is the categories of books that I read this quarter. I think I've got like a nice-ish mix of things that I'm reading and the areas that they're aimed at. I could always be doing better, but I just like the breakdown that I've got. I'm most surprised by this stat, that I've read so many physical books this quarter. Normally I don't feel like I read that many, but clearly I am doing. I'm probably just not looking at it in as much detail previously when I've been doing this, but I'm trying to be a little bit more strict on keeping a track of everything that I'm reading and recording it in the right place. This is just the representation in the books that I've been reading, so there's been quite a nice bunch of books that I've read that have got different points of view or different representation in there. So rather than it being just like a straight up disability rep, there might be racial and disability and LGBTQ. There's not been as many sort of like mental health representations in these books, but I think I'm doing all right with the books that I have been able to get through and to pick up. And finally, my star ratings. So I've not done too bad with the books that I've read. As you can see, I've mainly read 4-star books, which is amazing. I think this is because I'm really good at picking what I know I'm gonna like. I'm 31 years old. I was gonna say 32. I'm not 32 for like 8 months. Let's not do that to myself. I'm 31 years old. I know what I like, I know what I don't like, and I tend to gravitate towards the things that I do like rather than I'm not gonna like. I think one of the biggest things that's gonna be interesting this year is me trying to read like my backlist books that I've got, that I've had for years, to see if the tastes of when I picked them up still match what I enjoy now. So I'm intrigued to see how my 23 and 23 is gonna go. Speaking of, I think I've read one book off that list so far. So far there is a lot of books getting on hold in December unless I like pick it up. But I think it's going to be interesting to see the books that I've picked up, what I actually enjoy, and if I still enjoy it or if I just kind of like did it on a whim. So now on to the reading wrap up part, which I'm sure everyone is excited by. I'm just going to do it in month order. I was thinking of doing it in star order, but I can't bother to like update the spreadsheet that I've got in front of me, so I am just going to do it month order. Maybe next time I'll swap it round to this is the lowest rated to the highest rated, but because it's over a quarter, I think it's a little bit different. The first book that I read in the quarter and actually finished in the quarter was We Were Liars by E. Lockhart, and I gave this book 3.5 stars. It was an okay book. I think for a book that was published so long ago, I was surprised that I was able to stay away from what the actual twist was in there. I thought that the writing style was interesting, but I feel like the author was trying too hard to keep a big secret from the reader. It was quite obvious that there was something about to happen. It was just trying to figure out which bit. I half got it right. I just thought the twist was going to be on the main character rather than on the surroundings of what was happening. So I thought it was going to be a sort of stuck in, I don't want to spoil it too much, but yeah, I thought it was going to be the other way around. So I was still like, kind of like, oh, that makes sense, but just from the other side of the other point of view. But then I guess the rest of the story and the way that the characters have been behaving made more sense with the way the book actually turned out. I thought it was an okay read. The main character was like really whiny. I know that she was a teenager and clearly had gone through something, but at the same time it was just, I don't know, and the metaphorical language was like just too much. It was very purple prose. There was one part where her dad left her mum, and I can't remember the exact wording, but it was something along the lines of he took a gun out of the car and he shot her straight through the heart, and then her heart was in her hands. And to start off with, I thought that he'd actually killed her, or was attempting to kill her, and then I realised, no, that's just her saying that her heart's been broken, he's ripped her heart out. But it was just done in such an over-the-top way that then when things were happening later on, I was like, is this a metaphor, or is this just the way the story's going? Because I just didn't know. It was so, like, up there to try and figure it out. I don't think it was a bad book, it's just, I think it was a book of its time. Maybe it'd be better suited because this is a YA book. If a YA audience was reading it, I am 31, I feel like maybe I'm just like a bit too far out of that character age range and ideas, but I don't think it was that. I think it was more just, I just couldn't connect with that character type in general. I don't think even as a teen that I would have really connected with that sort of person. A very rich family trying to keep hold of their wealth and power was pretty much the gist of the family dynamics, and that's not something I've ever experienced. The second book that I read in January was actually Tress of the Emerald Sea, and I finally got my physical copy. I'm so happy that I have got this. I spent far too much money backing the Kickstarter to get this book, but I'm so happy to say that I've got it. It's just so stunning. And I also gave this book 5 stars. It was absolutely wonderful. A lot of people didn't like it because it was a different voice style than what Brandon Sanderson usually does, but personally it matched really well with the sort of fantasy that I grew up reading. I really love Terry Pratchett, I love Douglas Adams, and it's that sort of humoristic vibe that you get within this story. So if you enjoy those two authors, then I think you would enjoy this. Brandon has said that he is trying something a little bit different with this one, and it's something that might potentially, the voice style at least, pop up later down his Cosmere universe. So if you don't like this one, you're probably not going to like some of the ideas he's got planned for the future, but if you do like it, then you're going to love them. I loved it. It took me a little while to get into the story. I didn't realise that it's a story being told by someone else, and I just thought it was an odd choice of the first page of how it was a third person point of view, but it made sense quickly. I think it took like maybe 2 or 3 pages for you to realise that the story was being told by someone else, sort of like you're all sat around a fire listening to someone telling a tale sort of thing. I really loved it. I don't want to spoil it because it's such a great book. Pretty much we are on, I can't remember the name of the world for this one, but the way that the magic works here is that there is water, but the seas are made of these type of spores that are falling down from a moon, and when they come into contact with any type of liquid, so like blood, water, sweat, urine, wine, beer, anything that's like water-esque liquidy, the spores grow into things, and the Emerald Sea is the green spores and they turn into vines. So if you accidentally inhale them, you get squished from the inside out. So there is some like really graphic sort of descriptions of the vines being used to kill people. Silver, I think it is, stops them from growing, or at least like puts a protective barrier up and like kind of kills them. It's definitely an interesting one and I would really recommend it. I think if you don't like Brandon Sanderson's other work, you may potentially like this because it's not in the same voice, it's not in the same style, it's a little bit different, but yeah, 5-star read for me, absolutely loved it. So glad that I spent as much money as I did to do this Kickstarter. The next book that I read in February was The Voice of the Gods by Trudy Canavan. This was the last in the, I think it was called The Wilds? I can't remember We Are the Five, Age of the Five series, that was it. It was the last in that series. I gave it 4 stars. I actually preferred this one a lot more to the second one. I think I preferred it more to the first than the first one as well, to be honest. But it wrapped up the series. It went through some of the points that I definitely thought were going to happen. I didn't like the way that the gods were portrayed in the first book. They were very shifty. And the more that I read them, I was like, it looks like there's going to be something happening. And then what I thought happened kind of happened. I thought something else was going to happen and it didn't. But I kind of like was on the right line with where it was going. I thought it was a good book. I thought it was a good way to end the series. I'm not entirely sure I liked the very end of the book. There was something there that, I don't know, it was a little bit off-putting, to be honest, but I kind of see where the author was coming from with what they'd put, but I don't know. I just didn't like it. I thought it'd be more satisfying for that to not happen. But overall, it was a great book. There's not much I can say because it's the end of a series and I don't really want to go into too many spoilers for it, but overall, I think the series is kind of like a 3.5 stars for me. It was okay, just not great. It was a middling sort of book. It's all right if you like fantasy. I think if you've got some spare time to read some fantasy, sort of like the old style, like epic high fantasy style things, you might enjoy it, but yeah, it's kind of like middle of the road for me. The next book that I read in February was, this is going to practice my Spanish now, Vuelve a casa osito. Yes, and it was by Anthony Leshark. I think this is a translated one. It is actually a kid's book translated into Spanish. I'm trying to like up my Spanish reading. I also need to up my French reading, but I couldn't find any French books that I wanted to read from the library. I'm going to try again though, just to try and get used to prose and the way that metaphorical language is used. I spent a lot of time doing essays and reading newspaper articles and not a lot of time reading fiction. So my ability to read Spanish fiction is not there. I don't understand I understand it, but I also don't understand it. It's a very strange time for me. I can't pick up the tone of like, if characters are angry or if they're sad or anything like that. I can't get the emotion because it's just not, I think I'm reading it too much like a textbook. So I'm trying to find like kids-based language stuff to ease me back into it, to get that sort of intonation and the implication behind words. This book was really cute. I gave it 3.5 stars. Not for any reason. I don't think it was terrible. It was just a cute little book. I would read it again. I would recommend it if you are trying to learn Spanish or you want to read a book in Spanish to the kids. It was quite heartwarming and cute, to be honest, but yeah, it wasn't anything special. I didn't think it was like overly great, but it was good for what it was. The next book that I read in February was La Caja de Pandora, and that was by Henriette Barco, I think it was. I gave that one 4 stars. It was just the story of Pandora's box in Spanish. I knew the story, but I've never actually read the story, so it was interesting to actually read this and to get a full understanding of the story of Pandora's box. I thought it was quite interesting. I liked it. This one was from a parallel textbook, so the top half of the page was all in Spanish and the bottom half was all in English. So it was sometimes where I was reading the Spanish and going, I kind of know what you're saying, but I don't know fully. I could drop back down to the English, check it, read it over and go, okay, so that word choice means that thing in English if you swap it over. That's what I need. I need to be able to understand the metaphors and idioms. Idioms! That's the word I need. Idiomatic language. That is what I'm struggling with in Spanish. The next book that I read in February was A Snow, Glass and Apple by Neil Gaiman. This is the graphic novel version of his book about Snow White, where Snow White is a vampire. I don't know if that's a huge spoiler for the book. It's an idea I've had myself, just the way that Snow White's always described. A few years ago I was like, that makes it sound like a vampire, and when Neil Gaiman did that and I was like, god damn it, Neil Gaiman. So I gave that one 4.5 stars. I love the way he's done it. I thought it was really interesting. I love the graphic novel, but I'm really intrigued to read the actual book now, just to see like the difference between how the storyline is developed, because you can't obviously put a lot of information in from pictures. The artwork was absolutely stunning. The artist for this was Colleen Doran, I think it was. Absolutely amazing. I love the style of it. I thought that the story was well portrayed, but obviously you don't get the full story of the written word. It would be interesting to see how Neil Gaiman actually wrote the words down, and yeah, to see what sort of like vibes he gave with that. But I really enjoyed this and would really recommend this if you're looking for sort of like a horror-esque retelling of Snow White. The next book that I read in February was Pretty Dead Queens by Alexa Dunn. I gave this one 4 stars. This is another one of her YA thrillers. Well, I say thriller and murder mystery. I'm not entirely sure what the difference is. I say thriller. I'm going to stick with thriller. I don't know if it is. I really liked it. I loved the storyline. There was a lot of grief in there, like grief of death of a parent. It is very strong on that theme. So if you are struggling with any sort of like parental loss or important family loss, maybe it might not be a good one for you because it does go into it. It's quite a heavy topic. I liked the threads that were woven in here. I half guessed what was going on. I didn't get one of the things until, well, it was like, it felt like it was being told a lot earlier, but it didn't seem like it was coming across until quite close to the end, where I was like, yep, no, that's definitely what's going on here. There was a little things that didn't make sense, but I thought it was an interesting book. I really enjoy Alexa's writing style. I think the YA thrillers are doing really well for her. I'm intrigued to see what her next one is. I think that's going to be an adult thriller, if I remember right. So I will probably be trying to pick up a copy of that at some point, but it was a really good book. The final book that I read in February was The Extra Hour by Will Declare. I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce that. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It was, I think this is one of the 2 non-fiction books that I read. This one was about how to get that extra hour in a day. So like delegating tasks where you can, automating things and little bits like that. I thought it was an okay book. There wasn't a lot of information that was sort of like great for me. One of the big things was that the metaphor where you have like the jars and the big rocks and the little rocks and pebbles and stuff, and about how you put things in. So like if you put all the little things in first, you can't fit everything in. So it's about doing your big tasks and then filtering in the smaller things around it. So have one big task a day, filter in what you can to make sure that you're getting as much done in your day as you can. There was another part about understanding your own circadian rhythm and being able to schedule plans and things like that based around when you wake up. I did a test on this and I got that I am neither a morning person nor a night person. It's like, just schedule them when you want. So that's really not helpful. I feel like I'm more night than morning. I can't do early mornings. I'm more active at night, as in like I'm more creative and things like that. So, which makes it difficult in a 9-to-5 job because I can't schedule work hours at like 8 o'clock at night, but that is when I'm like most powered on, frustratingly. I thought it was an interesting book, but not one that I was like hugely groundbreaking. I don't think there was a lot for me to take away from it. It's one of those that you can see that information online. It's not stuff that you need to specifically read this book for. I just thought it was nice that the way they condensed all the information. It wasn't bad, but yeah, I don't think I found a lot of information from it. The first book that I read in March was The Stars We Steal by Alexa Dunn. I have got a copy of that somewhere. I think it's downstairs. Otherwise I would be holding it up here. I gave this one 4 stars as well. This one was a retelling of Persuasion by Jane Austen. I don't think I've actually ever read Persuasion. I don't think. The storyline didn't seem to be very clear anyway to me. I couldn't tell which one it was. So it's definitely not one I've read. So I'm now intrigued to go and read Persuasion because I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a good book. The sci-fi element of it was really great. It was set on a spaceship. There was like some twists in there. I really liked it. There's stuff, I think I don't want to like go into it too much because it could potentially spoil 2 books, but it was about a young heiress whose family has lost their money and is trying to find a suitor pretty much. The one she wants was too poor and then he turns up and he's not as poor. So it's kind of like trying to understand what he's done in the years since they've been apart. There's some like intrigue, some other bits and bobs. And there was like one plot line on like this terrorist organisation, and I thought it was going to be a bigger importance throughout the book. And it just really wasn't. It was very much sort of like take a step back kind of thing. So I'm like, annoyed because I thought that was going to like have major importance, and it just wasn't. It was kind of like ditched. And I'm like, oh, but this would have been so interesting. So it's a shame that that's not the book that we got, but the one we did get was really good as well. I really enjoyed it. The second book that I read in March was The Deficit Myth by Stephanie Kelton. I gave this one 4 stars. This was an audiobook that I listened to. It's about how the monetary system that we have in the US and in the UK and I think China, there's the ones where you've got a sovereign currency anyway, how debt is really not a thing. And it was quite interesting to see like there's this different sort of theory in the financial sphere about how we should be treating debt and how we should be treating money creation. It only works with sovereign currencies, so like the EU for example, because the euro is tied to so many different countries, there's not like an overall... If you can create the money, that's the idea behind it. Like the deficit's not really a thing if you can create and control the currency that's being made. So it's quite interesting. I half feel like I understand where it's coming from. I feel like it's one of those where you'd need to do a lot of research into it to fully understand it yourself. But it does like kind of twist things, like how there's always enough money in the budgets for like military spending, but there's never enough money in budgets for social care. So it was intriguing in that sense, and yeah, I would recommend it because it's just like an intriguing point of view if you're interested in like finances and the financial markets and like just the finance world in general. I think it's a good one to have a look at and to see what sort of book and to see the different ideas that can be like put out there. It's one that's always counted a lot. I mentioned it to a friend and he was instantly like, oh look, this has all been debunked, and I'm like, has it though? It's one of those things. I found it interesting, give it 4 stars. I read the next 3 books all together pretty much in a row, and that was Heartstoppers volumes 2 to 4 by Alice Oseman. I gave them all 4.75 stars. They were absolutely cute, they're so wholesome and heartwarming. I wanted to read them all because I wanted to watch the series, and I knew that the series went from volume 1 to like volume 2-esque. And I'd read volume 1 in June last year, so I was like, I need to just get these read. They're just so cute. I like the themes that have been explored in them. I think it's really interesting, the direction that the series has taken. I think volume 5 is the last one. I have picked up Nick and Charlie, the book, from the library that I need to read at some point, because I just love their story so much. They're just so cute and it's so wholesome, and I'm just like, oh, it's just, I don't know, it's just cute and wholesome and just makes me feel so happy when I read it. It's like a proper comfort read, so absolutely love them. The next book that I read in March was White Sand Volume 1 by Brandon Sanderson. So this is a graphic novel based on the first ever novel that Brandon Sanderson wrote for the Cosmere. It was never published, and I loved it. The storyline, the idea behind it, the racism, the sort of like the prejudice against people, the disability prejudices, it was so good. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good volume. I got it from my library. I don't think that my local library has it. So if I want to get volumes 2 and 3 to finish it off, I need to request them, but then I have to pay for a request fee, and I'm like, oh, I might just buy them myself. I'm trying to not do that because I've got too many books. I gave this one 4 stars. I really liked it. I thought it was a good book. I thought it was interesting to see a Brandon Sanderson story played out through pictures. I loved the artwork. It was a very mature style. You could tell that it's aimed at an adult audience. I like that with graphic novels, that you can tell the age range based on the type of drawing. And yeah, it was a good one. But I need to finish that storyline now because it's like I'm a third of the way through and I need to know what happens to like the overall ending. The next book that I read in March was The Girl from the Sea, and that was by Molly Knox Ostertag. I gave this one 5 stars, well 4.75 again. This was a really cute little graphic novel about a girl who lives in, I think it's Canada. Family moves to this island in Canada. I think her dad and mum are split up. I can't remember. And she falls in love with Selkie, and I loved it. What I loved most about it was the fact that there was a Selkie in it. I was on about Selkies at work the other day and people were just looking at me like, are you mad? And I'm like, no, I'm not mad, it's mythology. So I loved the storyline. It was really cute. It was a little sapphic romance between this girl and this Selkie, and it was about trying to save the seals close to the island, and it was just like family dynamics, friendship dynamics, just a little bit of wholesomeness. I thought it was interesting that the main character had also got like the insecurities that she'd displayed and the way that she was trying to overcome them from the situation that she'd been dealt with life, how she'd been sort of like withdrawing from people, and how she sort of like, her plan was to wait until she went to college, university, to be her true self, and how that was actually overall impacting her and hurting her. So it's nice to see like that sort of flip. And the final book that I read in March was Wild Seed by Octavia E. Butler. I gave this one 4 stars. This was an interesting one. I found that the voice style was difficult. It was like a third person omniscient. It was constantly flicking between the 2 characters, Doro and Anyanwu. I know I've pronounced that wrong. It was, the way that it was done was very much like you would get the sort of perspective of Anyanwu, and then it moved to Doro, and it was constantly flicking back and forth between the 2. So it was a little bit confusing at times, but I really liked the story. I thought it was interesting how sort of, this is the prequel to another series. So this one was written after a series, and I think it was to give more background on the main characters within that. I think it's called The Pattern Master, and I'm intrigued to read that series. I kind of want to read it. This one was published in 1918, the others were like in the 1970s. So it's like quite a few years old now, a good 5 decades ago. So the world was a different place, and Doro was like really uncomfortable. It was just a really uncomfortable person to read. He was very slimy, very gaslighty. It was very much like an abusive, toxic relationship. I feel like I need to read the series to get a clearer view of what that dynamic is and why that dynamic is in place. It was just really sad. There was just some things happening. I'm like, why have you done that? Like, can't there be like some nice wholesomeness in it? But clearly that is not the story that Octavia E. Butler was trying to tell. And I appreciate that, but at the same time, like, I just want some nice wholesomeness. But overall, I really loved it. I need to read the series. I would definitely recommend it, and recommend that other people pick it up and give it a go. So those were the 16 books that I read throughout the first quarter of the year. An interesting mix. I think I've managed to read so much because I've managed to read so much manga and comic, graphic novel style things. And they are really easy to get through. Like the Heartstopper ones, I think I read in a couple of hours. The same with like White Sand. I know the girl who's in the sea, I can't remember the full title of that, it's gonna bug me now. That was like about an hour tops to read that. Might even been less, but I know when I read the first volume of Heartstopper last year, it took me 30 minutes to get through, so you can take in the story a little bit easier, I think is what I'm trying to say. So I was able to get through so many of them because I could read I think I read 3 in a day a couple of times. So it just helped boost my numbers, for which I'll be forever grateful. It's just a shame I don't own them, so that is knocking some of my own TBR down. If you've read any of the books that I've mentioned in this video, I'd be really interested to see what your thoughts were on these. I think I've had a good reading month. Clearly it wasn't too bad because nothing was below 3 stars. I do think I'm getting better at picking my own style and judging what I'm going to enjoy. I think for me to like hit 2 and 1 stars, it's going to have to be something that I really dislike, and it's unusual that I'll find something where I've read it and I'm judging it that harshly. It's only happened a couple of times, but there's a lot of books on my TBR, so who knows. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a like, and if you want to see more of my videos, don't forget to hit subscribe. There's a new one out every single week. I hope you're well and you're all staying safe, and until next time, bye!